Bright lights.
Greg, can you talk about, or Tim, do you anticipate pushing for a couple things the mayor mentioned, the referendum, the bridge language in the special session? And how much appetite do you think legislators will have for talking about other topics outside the budget in that?
Well, I'll give it a shot, and then maybe Tim can back me up on that. Legislature is going to be called back into the session, and I don't think the governor is going to do that until they've had a little bit of a timeout here. I thought it was kind of interesting the way he phrased that in terms of go home and talk to your constituents. But I think they're going to be coming in and focused on the budget. That's going to be first and foremost in terms of that. Whether or not they're going to be dealing with the issue of a referendum, I'm not sure. But our position is that we've staked out that the citizens should have a referendum and an opportunity to make a decision on that. Whether that will be entertained in this legislative session, in a special session, I'm really not sure. We'll just have to wait and see how it gets engaged. On the bridge matter, we've been very positive of that. Actually, the City Council next Tuesday evening will be discussing the bridge agreement we have with Allen County. Several other communities have already approved it. Our agreement says that both the City of Fort Wayne and Allen County would support language to go into the state statutes, which would make bridges the responsibility of the county. We continue to want to be able to push that and are hopeful that that would be a part of the legislative special session.
You sense that the agreement that was made between the county needs to just be firmed up so that somebody can't retract a part of it, or just so that it's set in stone?
Well, it's always nice to have a little insurance there. The agreement says that the county would be responsible for all bridge work after 2017. They made that commitment, but if you put it into state statute, that really does what you're talking about, put it in stone, and then there's no question about it. And they've made that commitment. They've been supportive of the legislation, so I think in this case both Fort Wayne and Allen County are moving together on this, and hopefully the legislature will listen. I anticipate that they'll be supportive of it. Our delegation was very supportive of the agreement, and I think supportive of the language as well.
Would you think the bridge issue would be more likely to come back than a referendum? I mean,
boy, Ben, you better talk to legislators about that, because I'm not an expert at all in terms of what happens down in Indianapolis. And special sessions, I think, are unique unto themselves. I know the first and foremost issue that the governor is calling back for is the budget, and whether or not they entertain other issues, I'm really not sure at this point.
will you be asking your lobbyists to encourage them to entertain other issues?
We aren't backing away at all. I mean, the fact that somebody seems somewhat surprised that the mayor said he wanted a referendum, and that we are down in Indianapolis supporting what the mayor said, which was a referendum, should surprise no one. I mean, I'm really kind of taken aback that anybody said that they were surprised that we were supportive of a referendum down there. And people who are our legislative advisors have to register with the state of Indiana. The people who were acting on Fort Wayne's behalf did indeed register with the state of Indiana. That's public knowledge, public record. If people didn't check that and are just now finding out about it, okay, well, it's never been a secret. It's never been something we haven't disclosed. The public records are there, have been available for anybody to pick up and examine at any time. So I don't think that there should be a big surprise here.
So having those records as part of a public file allows you to answer questions, and this administration to answer questions, not a full truth, just part of it that I can go find out somewhere else because that's out there. That doesn't bind you to answer a whole truth.
I wasn't part of your dialogue or your question and answer. What I'm simply saying is factual and can be verified by any one of you if you want to go there. And that is that legislative advisors did indeed register with the state of Indiana. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. That's public information, publicly disclosed. Sure. Mayor Henry did say that he was supportive of a referendum, and we've made no backing off of that, is that we wanted to have that. The only way you can have a referendum is if the state legislature would approve such a referendum. We've asked them to do that, and we're still asking them to do that.
He said he wanted a referendum 4 months after he had hired a lobby firm to push for one.
That's not true. That's not what he said. What he said was that he decided to explore gaming. He did explore it through a lobbyist and through 2 studies, which were publicly released. So after taking that exploratory step, he then decided, well, there was a possibility, and then he came out and said, we ought to have a referendum, and the people of this city, not the mayor, but the people of this city ought to weigh in, and they ought to be able to have a voice in making that decision. That's been front and center in terms of his position, and I don't think anything has changed there.
Was there a reason you felt the need to hire two separate firms to lobby on the gaming issue?
Tim has a little more expertise in that area, and I'm going to defer to him, and I've got a microphone that's slipping here.
I'll try to fix it. Ben, I think it's in part a function of just how the issue evolved. As the mayor indicated and as the deputy mayor explained, early on we were simply exploring what the opportunities were. As it became apparent that the business of state government is a complex business. The irony of all of this is that in order for the citizens of Fort Wayne to be allowed the opportunity to choose whether they want gaming or not, it takes the approval of the state legislature. So if you think through that, it seems unusual that for the community to make a decision which they determine to be whether it's in its own best interest, you have to get the permission of the legislature. Getting the permission of the legislature on an issue like gaming is a complicated process. If you follow state politics at all, you know that it triggers a number of issues. As we became aware of the complexity of that issue and what it would take to give the citizens an opportunity to make that choice, it became apparent to us that it would be prudent to engage a second firm as well to assist in that effort.
And do you plan on keeping both firms through the length of the contract? I mean, at this point, is that the plan?
We have the opportunity to terminate at any time.
I know that.
We'll evaluate that on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
I think we're all still trying to digest the reality of what the special session might bring and what opportunities we might have to advance the city's interest during that session.
One of the lawmakers down there, as we were down there this week, indicated that he believed that the special session did hold real promise. Well, I guess I should say, in his perspective, he was not happy about the idea that gambling could be expanded in Fort Wayne, but believed that a special session would open up the minds of lawmakers more to the idea of expanded gambling, just because as maybe another month from now the revenue projections may be worse and maybe more of a search for additional revenues in other ways. Do you feel the same, that it seems likely that as time passes here in another month or so, that there may be more openness to the idea of granting this referendum?
Well, we're saying the same thing that I think we've always said in terms of the city's position, and that is that the citizens of Fort Wayne ought to have the opportunity to weigh in making this decision. So if there's an opportunity for the legislature to approve a referendum, we are right there, and we think that the citizens ought to have the opportunity to make that call. Whether it comes up in a special session, boy, you need better legislative tea leaf readers than myself to be able to make that. But it sounds like there's some possibility from your conversation.
One of the issues that came up at the very end of the session was the area contingency wanting fixing of their casino issue, and there's, I guess, the talk revived itself of moving one of the licenses or one of the casinos. Would that be too advanced for what the city is ready for at this point, to be looking at that without a referendum, to be actually supporting a move of the casino?
City of Fort Wayne is not supporting any kind of gaming question unless there's a referendum and there's a vote of the people here. I mean, let's just make that very clear. Whether or not that's a license that could be coming from Erie and being relocated to Fort Wayne, that's a possibility, and there's been talk in the Erie newspapers about that possibility, and I think probably some at the legislature as well. That's a potential scenario, but under no circumstances are we supportive of any kind of gaming coming to Fort Wayne without a vote of the people. The people really need to be able to weigh in on this and make a decision, and we think that that is the right position for the city to take, and we'll let the people make that call.